and welcome to another today's Decay, where we're celebrating births and beginnings of everything important since the dawn of time. July 14th edition. What happened today? What happened today? In 1853, the Crystal Palace first opened its doors. There's a couple of Crystal Palaces, but the one in New York City was part of, I want to say, was it a World's Fair, I think? And architecturally, it was like nothing that had been attempted in like the modern world. It was like all glass and gleaming metal, as if this was like a, I don't know, utilitarian, no, brutalist maybe? Either way, nothing was seen like this. Here I am coughing. In my coffin. It's very fitting. Ah! These are the jokes. Anyway, Crystal Palace was built where the current Bryant Park is in New York City, just west of where the New York Public Library eventually was built. And the Crystal Palace was a marvel of its day, architecturally speaking, creating headlines all over the world for all the light and air they were able to bring into this structure. There's really nothing like this had been done before, I don't think, anywhere. Certainly not in America. All this light they brought in, and within 2 to 4 years, and like lots of work being done to create this thing, the whole thing burned down. As you know, as things happen, back to dust. But it's one of those stories that I love about New York City specifically, but I guess you could say most places. I don't know. I mean, I was in Europe, and things are pretty old there. Things don't really just burn down all over the place. I guess some places they do, but in certain areas. But so much of New York is like what used to be there. I think there's a quote by, is it Colin Whitehead? Is that right? Something Whitehead, I believe. From his book, The Colossus of New York, that you're only a New Yorker once you start pointing out what used to be there and what used to be there. And I think that's fitting. And in this case, the Crystal Palace at 42nd Street and 6th Avenue used to be there in, like, you know, the 1850s. And nobody would know it, you know? That's like the, I don't know, magical thing about it, I guess. Like, is there any energy left from like whatever people, you know, put their hopes and dreams and excitement into this thing? If you were looking for me to answer that question, I cannot. No. Today, Dave Fleischer, of one half of the Fleischer brothers, born in 1894. I'm really drawn to him. I'm drawn to him and his brother's work because they were animators. Get it? All right. Okay. Tough crowd. They did the Out of the Inkwell Cocos. They did the 20s and 30s Betty Boops, like with all the rotoscoping of Cap Calloway and Louis Armstrong. They did the beautiful 1940s Superman cartoons. Oh, awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Love the Fleischer brothers. C.D. Johann, born today, 1904. Wonderful scream queen actress of the pre-code era. Probably the movie you'd know her from is Karl Freund's 1932 classic starring Boris Karloff and none other than C.D. Johann in The Mummy. Here is a biography on her. You can see that, maybe, possibly, yeah. All right, good. She was started off on stage as an actress and basically like lowered her bar by appearing in a couple of films, including Beyond the Mummy. She was in Tiger Shark with Edward G. Elmer, who plays this seafaring guy who's, it's almost like it's a Moby Dick type story or whatever, where he winds up getting his arm bitten off by a shark and puts in his place a hook. It's kind of like a pre-code film that borders on horror just because he plays it so menacingly. It's Sins of Moratora, I think. I could be saying that wrong. Forget. I don't think I've ever seen it actually, but I hear really good things about it. Yeah. Eventually, she wound up in a tumultuous marriage where he was abusive, and she left him and wound up running like a self-help and like new age yoga school, I think, for several decades in upstate New York. So well done, Zeta. Yeah, right there. Zeta Johann. What else? What else? Harry Dean Stanton, born today in 1926, who had like such a wonderful and varied and long career full of like all sorts of great character actors and nonsense. Big Harry Dean Stanton fan. Vince Taylor, born today, 1939, the Black Leather Rebel. The other Black Leather Rebel. Based in France, but really kind of, I've always viewed him as more of a like British rocker because he was very embraced by like the 60s British rock and roll world. And it certainly like took aesthetics that Gene Vincent, I'd say, created, but like turned it up to 11, where he's like whoa, where he's like waving chains around on stage and like looks just like a human tornado, not the Dolomite, but a human tornado nonetheless. Amazing. He was the man. Obviously, you know, brand new Cadillac, but Jet Black Machine, a whole bunch of others. And then eventually, when his kind of musical era evolved, he got really into aliens and creating his own cult, as you do, right? I mean, you know, we've all been there. And didn't die until 91, which is wild to me. Oh, and also supposedly he's like part of the inspiration, like with this whole aliens and cult thing. He's part of the inspiration for David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust. So yeah, well done, Vince Taylor. And last, but certainly not least, who did I read about? Whoa, in this tome, it's heavy. In this tome I read in my tomb, it's not a tomb, it's not a tomer. Ted's Rebels, Hepcats, and Psychos, the story of British Rockabilly, 1966 to 1998, by Paul Ragg. Buy this book, keep it under your pillow at night, and maybe by osmosis you will have retained it all. Or just, you know, read it. Why? Because eventually you get to the part with Rockin' Ronnie Weiser and Rollin' Rock Records. He was born today in 1945, and was a huge fan of rock and roll, starting in the 60s, creating a fanzine, eventually resulting in the Rolling Rock record label. And while Britain never fully gave up on rock and roll like Americans did, they turned and found inspiration in Ronnie Weiser and everything he was doing, because he was actually an American who loved this stuff still. And so, like, they love American music. Here's an American who's doing it. What a perfect combination. That actually works out pretty well, right? And the bands he was able to connect with, this was not a thriving scene on the West Coast where he was based out of. So these are all, like, you know, it was him just like reaching out to Ray Campy and Johnny Carroll and all these people who like were just living their lives. There was no crowd or interest in them. So he like created a whole studio in his house, I think in his, that wasn't his kitchen, in like his patio or something like that, where they'd just like create new stuff in the late 60s or at least early 70s. And then eventually all went to England and like played for all these Teddy Boys in the 70s. And here they are bringing over like original, like, you know, like upright basses, of which like the English had never seen being played in this type of style before. And dramatically changed rock and roll. Or maybe not changed it, but saved rock and roll. So, in closing, in closing, till tomorrow. Goodbye.